Let's take a look at a translation error in the King James Version that continues to influence Christians today, even if they don't use the King James Version anymore. Hey everybody, I'm Dan McClellan. I'm a scholar of the Bible and religion. The fit for this video is Jurasisic Parak. And in Daniel 3, verse 25, Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace after he's thrown Daniel's companions, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, into the furnace, and he says he sees a fourth person. And the King James Version says the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. And for centuries this has been interpreted as a reference to Jesus. It is a mistranslation, pure and simple. The Aramaic is bar Elohim, which is indefinite and explicitly plural. It would be more accurately translated a son of gods, which is a conventional idiomatic way to refer to a member of the class known as gods. In other words, Nebuchadnezzar sees a deity, a god. That's all. Remember, this is a Babylonian king. The author is telling the story through the perspective of this Babylonian king, and so says that it looks like there's a god in there with the other four. Most translations these days correct this, and it will say the form of the fourth is like a god, or a son of gods, or a divine being, or something like that. The New King James Version does not. It maintains the Son of God, and this has influenced other translations. For instance, Brenton's translation of the Septuagint renders the Son of God, even though the Greek says angelou theou, an angel of God. And many Christians today, even if they don't use the King James Version, will insist that this is still a reference to Jesus Christ. But that would not be a common interpretation without the translation error of the King James Version. And people have told me in the past, you can't prove that's not Jesus, and I can say that's Jesus if I want to, and that's absolutely true. But it's also a manifestation of the fact that we negotiate with the text, and we interpret the text in ways that make it more meaningful and useful to us today. And so this is a manifestation of the desire not to allow the text to operate on its own terms, but to compel the text to operate in the service of our terms today. This is what I mean when I talk about negotiating with the text. We're trying to read into the text something that will make the text more meaningful and useful to us. And that is why the text is not the ultimate authority. The text is just the proof text that authorizes and validates the ultimate authority, which is our tradition and the interpretations that our tradition curates.
Just a little extra that I would like to add to what my guy Dan there was saying is the fact that the Bible demonstrates how it is propaganda and a tool of propaganda in the way that it always seems to describe other people, especially leaders who worship a different God, acknowledgement of the Hebrew God, as if that Hebrew God is a chief God or some special God that all of a sudden now they must listen to. We have to remember that the people of that day, the writers, as well as all the surrounding people for the most part, were very henotheistic, meaning that they believed their God existed for them and your God existed for you. There was no challenge to the fact of whether or not your God existed or not. It is just whether or not your God was striving strong with you or not at the time frame. And we see this when we look at the stories of Shamash and how he defeated Yahweh, that one God can allow for victory or defeat either way. And we also see this when we're talking about how they perceive other gods with the story of Balaam. Balaam worshiped his God, but then when was accosted by this angel and then told by Yahweh not to put a curse on the Israelites, he didn't. But it's always this perception, this propaganda movement in the Bible, especially Old Testament, that makes you think that those people gave more glory or power or respect to the God of the Bible. And that's why I say it's propaganda. When you have the story with Abraham and his wife slash half-sister Sarah go to the Pharaoh, and the Pharaoh takes her and then realizes that it is because of this woman and the fact that he lied. Oh, his God has put all these curses on us and nobody's having babies and all these sorts of things. So let me let you go and go back to your husband but take all these slaves and take all this silver and take all these animals and take all this stuff that I'm going to give you, because even though your guy lied, and the Pharaoh did nothing wrong that was outside of their culture, your guy lied, but now the Pharaoh's being punished, and then the Pharaoh submits to the understanding of this guy. And have a similar situation with Amalek, and where it's like, oh, even though he lied, I gotta pay the penalty for his lie, which just demonstrates how, as I've always said, the Old Testament is really just propaganda for a Canaanite people who had separated themselves to call themselves Hebrews or Israelites, and it was their way of saying we're better than the ones we just separated from, and the ones who are our cousins and our brothers, but we're better than them. We're the token Semitics that this God has chosen. And so it is all just propaganda. And the Nebuchadnezzar story demonstrates that as well. Many people will tell you that Nebuchadnezzar just believed, it must be, this God is so great and right. Look, Daniel read my dreams, and I see another man in there, and it is. And in some Bibles it say the Son of Man, and that Nebuchadnezzar all of a sudden. But why did Nebuchadnezzar ever bow down to this God? Where in the history and the archaeology does Nebuchadnezzar convert the Babylonian Empire into the worship of Yahweh? It never happens, but they make it seem like they became so beholden to this God, so it just never happened. Nebuchadnezzar continued to worship, I think, Baal, or who, I don't know right off the top of my head because I'm a little under the weather. But yeah, so y'all have a great day. And remember always, you have to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.